So I was in the shower, I was cleaning my ass and making all sure it's all sparkly, spanky clean.
I'm not the funny one, I'm the pretty one.
Cock shots. I just checked myself out.
Candles, music, wine, and then lube up and get on top.
The glory hole's like a big theater. I've imagined your friend.
Which means your pants had better come off. Mama needs playtime. I do this.
We're not sluts.
We just love love. Hello, this is Mrs. Atom,
And this is Mr. Adam.
and you're listening to us here on By the By.
Admittedly, for a second there, I forgot who I was. I think in my brain I heard you say Mr. Adam. I'm like, you're not Mr. Adam. I'm Mr.
Last time I checked, I wasn't Mr. Atom.
Laws. Last time I checked, you weren't Mr. Adam either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tonight is going to be a little different episode compared to normal.
Can we say a very special episode?
Yes.
It's like episode 31 too, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Not 31 too, but 31 as well.
Right. Proper grammar.
Whatever.
It's important.
Yes. So this is something a little different, I think.
Yeah, so in this episode, we're going to give our coming out stories as far as when we realized we were bisexual, when we kind of made it known out in the world. And the reason we want to do it now is because we talk on the podcast a lot about being open and honest in your relationships and whatnot. And Mr. Adam particularly feels as if we're being a bit disingenuous by, I'm going to say, quote unquote, hiding behind pseudonyms. And we'll still use them because honestly, I'm so used to it at this point.
Right?
But we do want to just go ahead and let you guys, as our listeners, know who we are and kind of the path that we went down to get where we are. So you're going to get a little bit more backstory. You've probably heard bits and pieces along the way, but now you'll get it all in one go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So step one, names.
Yes.
Hi. We started this again. Hi, everybody. This is Bradford.
This is Angela.
And you're listening to us here on By the By.
Welcome.
It's like ripping a Band-Aid off.
No.
That wasn't so bad.
Eh. It's who I am.
Yeah, it's me too.
Yeah.
No, but like...
And you may see a lot of you, some of you have already met us, so you'll see us, out and about at different events and whatnot, and you'll probably see our faces at some point, and it's fine. We don't care.
No, we thought long and
We're
hard.
not going to hide anymore.
Pun intended, long and hard. We thought a lot about this, and like Angela just said, for me especially, I find it's one of those things that I want to be true to myself and true to ourselves and also true to the audience. And I feel for me what that means is kind of stop hiding behind the mask and pick up that flag and raise my freak flag high.
Your freak flag?
My freak flag. Not fruit fly, freak flag. It's different. Anyway.
Say that 5 times fast.
No, please don't. I can't. Listen, I got so much shit over the last couple of times me trying to beatbox. I am not going to say, look, people, I beatbox, all right? That's what I do. And if you don't like me, then deal with it.
Fortunately, he doesn't beatbox very often.
Or very well. Yeah, so here we are.
Should we start with your story?
Do we want to start with the depressing, sad stuff, or do we want to move in? So I got to be honest, I have not been looking forward to this episode. No. And it's not about coming out. It's not about becoming clean. Well, it is.
Well,
God, I like to shower. I also like long baths. It's not about coming out because that's not what it's about or what the negativity is about. But for me, I think what it is a lot of our friends and a lot of our family and even you have heard bits and pieces of the story out of context. But for me, when I tell it all in one arcing story, it's really hard to hear, even for me to say it. And I get very upset and very angry and mostly with myself in many points. So I say do we want to save that? I don't know. So tell me about you as I digress. Like, at what point did you say, hey, I like girls?
So for me, I don't know that I can't say that there was one single moment. It was just one of those things that when I was growing up, I didn't really see gender. You know, people were people, and people that were nice to me and that I liked were my friends, and it didn't matter. You know, Mr. Adam, you know that I had a very good friend in middle school, kind of elementary school, middle school, and it was a female, and we were very close. We were always doing everything together. We would, you know, be together almost every day after school. We would stay the night with each other. We would walk around the playground holding hands, and I'm going to say other kids would tease us about being gay because we were always together and we were always holding hands. And, I mean, granted, the one who teased us the most, I found out later, actually had a crush on me, so that probably had a lot to do with it. But
Was it a him or a her that
it
had
was
a crush
a him.
on you? Okay.
It was a him. But it was also one of those things that, you know, the way I was raised, I was always told, directly or indirectly, that, you know, you get married and you have kids and you go through the whole quote-unquote normal path. And so I always in my head thought that I was supposed to be with boys and I'm going to marry a guy. And so it never really occurred to me that I could have a relationship with a female. But I had, you know, some of my best friends were females, and I was always attracted to both males and females. There were people of both sexes that I very much looked up to and admired, lusted after. It didn't matter to me. And so I would say from a very young age, I didn't care one way or the other. But I also didn't act on it because it was not expected of me. I would always go along with what people thought, particularly, you know, parents and elders and in general society. And so it wasn't until college, which is very cliche, but college, when I felt a little freer in which to act on anything or to explore at all. And at the time I was married, but my husband was a little more accepting, and, you know, he was not as conservative of a background as I was, and so I could kind of play a little bit and start exploring, but I wouldn't say that I myself identified as bisexual or really thought I could have a relationship with a female until I was probably my early 30s, maybe 30, 31, something like that. And it was just, you know, after I went through a succession of relationships and I finally took some time to say, you know, I had 2 failed marriages, and I finally took time to explore myself and say, okay, this obviously isn't working out. Who am I? What do I want from life? What do I want from myself? What do I enjoy? And that's when I took the time to slow down, take a step back, not think about what everybody else wanted from me, but what I wanted for myself, is when I kind of started to actually realize that this is something that I want and I need. And that's when I started acting on it more, and I started feeling like it was more okay for me to be attracted to females and to act on that in the right scenarios. But it took a long time for me to get there. And I won't say that I ever really denied myself of anything. It's just that I didn't realize it was an option and that it was okay until I finally took a break and just, you know, kind of let myself go and just let myself accept the fact that I'm not going to be able to please everyone. It doesn't matter what society, what people around me want. What do I need to make myself happy? And that's when I kind of worked through and was better able to accept what it was and identify. I would say identifying was the first step.
So in those early days, how did you identify? Like those early 30s when you were rediscovering yourself, what did you do to sort of help yourself self-actualize and self-identify?
Well, at that point, and I mean, this isn't going to be the path I'm going to say out there for most people because it's not plausible for most people, but at that point, I was splitting up from second husband, and part of that, because we had a lot of joint friends, I separated myself from a lot of our friends. And it was basically, you don't accept me and one of my very good female friends. There was a rift, and I basically was not going to let her go by the wayside because I'd been friends with her for a long time and we were very good friends. And it was like, this friendship is more important to me than the rest of you, and sadly, even my husband at the time. And so I left a lot of my friends behind, so-called friends. I mean, I would say now they weren't actually my friends, but I left a lot of them behind, and I separated myself from them. And I was very much alone for a little while until I made new friends that would accept me. But at that point, I had the one female friend that I, of course, hung out with a lot. And I'm okay being on my own, and because I will go out and I will meet people, I will make an effort. And so that's what I did, was I just started, going out and doing things that I enjoyed and meeting people that enjoy the same type of thing. But I made a point that when I met new people, I was very honest with them from the beginning. I was very open. I mean, not just like, hey guys, but still, if the questions were asked, if anything, I'd made it a point to be very true to myself and true with them. And if they didn't like that, if they didn't accept it, then that's fine. They could go on. I was, at that point, I was beyond wanting to fake myself to have a friend.
Right.
I'd only wanted friends who actually accepted me for who I was. So it was a little lonely there for a bit. I didn't have a lot of friends for a time, but then I was able to rebuild and find people who actually accepted me for who I was and didn't care.
So did you date women?
No, I didn't really date anyone. No, I at the time I didn't want a serious relationship because
Right.
I wanted that time to explore and be comfortable, and I didn't think I wanted a serious relationship for a very long time. And so it was more just casual hookups.
Right.
I would say it was probably 75% men with the occasional female, but I didn't date anyone, male or female.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next.
No, I was trying to formulate another question in my head, and I had one, but it seems to be floating away.
I mean,
did you have you come out to your parents?
So my family is not very big on, I'm going to say, talking. They're not big on talking and direct conversations. That's hard in my family. And so I've never said to my parents that, hey, I am bisexual. Now, my mom knows from actions and from other conversations that we've had. I'm going to throw you under the bus here and say that we had you and another couple friends over one year for a Thanksgiving dinner.
Yes. It was my first Thanksgiving as a single man.
Yes, and we were just hooking up at the time, not dating at all.
Yeah, only about a few months.
I was going to say, we hadn't even been hooking up that long. But when my mom, I remember when we were talking about, hey, do you mind if these people come to Thanksgiving? They don't have family around. She said, absolutely, sure, not a problem. And then she said, well, how do you know them? And of course, I knew you all from work, and I'd made the comment that it was your first Thanksgiving alone, and that, you and your wife had just broken up, and somehow one thing led to another, and I made the comment, somehow it came up like why you split up, and I said that you were bisexual, and that, that's what ultimately kind of brought the end to the relationship. And so then, of course, after we start dating, it's like, well, there you go. So I would say that she knows from conversations we've had and from other things, but it's never been directly said. My brother knows, of course, because he came and stayed with us, and very first thing when he came and stayed with us was we have pants on and pants off friends.
Yeah.
And at one point during his visit, I was in the bathtub with one of our female partners.
Yeah.
So
I remember him coming in and going, hey, where's Angela? In the bathtub. Oh. Where's the other lady? In the bathtub. Oh. There's two bathtubs? Nope. Oh. I'm going to go read.
He gets that look on his face for a second, where he's processing, and then the light bulb comes on, and
I felt so bad for him that day. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's more how my family is. It's those kind of subtle things, and then everybody puts the pieces together, and oh, okay,
Yeah.
Sure. So I mean, it's
Poor boy.
Yeah, it's more tacit and passive acceptance than actual, anything
Right.
direct.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I do tend to be a direct person.
You
just
are.
not
You're
with
really
my family.
direct. It's just funny because there's.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it because there's no real reason to tell them. I mean, it's not like you're. You're not dating a woman. You're not. There's no strong, compelling reason to say, "Hey, I'm bisexual."
Well, and also with my family too, they very much. I'm not going to say they expect the unexpected with me, but when I do things that are a bit outside the norm,
It's not surprising.
It's not surprising, and they just kind of shrug their shoulders and, okay, she's going to do what she wants to. It doesn't matter what we think or say, so it just, it just is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of another clever question. I was trying to be all interviewer thing and ask the questions that the people might be asking.
Right.
I'm sure there's people screaming into their headphones at this point saying, "Ask this."
I'm sure. And if you
I can't hear you.
And if you do have questions later, please feel free to email or send us messages and whatnot. So.
It's one of those things that I think the one consistent thing about coming out stories is everybody's is different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody starts it differently. Everybody has that journey along the line is different, and everyone's outcome is different. And I think, I look at yours and say, that's actually, it's a really positive experience. You've not really, your parents didn't, I guess I get the same point though, you didn't really come out and say explicitly, so they can sort of ignore what they don't want to address.
Yes. And that's how my family is much more
it's
so.
kind of a
is
stick
that,
your head in the sand kind of response.
Yeah. If you don't acknowledge it, then
It doesn't exist.
It may exist, but it doesn't exist in their world, so it's okay. Yeah.
So do you think, so we're going back to the States, do you think it'll come up more with your dad when we're there?
I think
because we're going to spend some time with him.
I think it will because we're going to spend more time with him, and I think it will. I think just by nature of the time that we're spending with him and whatnot, I think it will come up probably a bit more. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
I'm kind of curious.
Sure.
I'm actually almost looking forward to it because I feel like
now
although he's conservative, he's
accepting.
Yeah, he's intelligently conservative.
Right.
There's those conservative people who just preach at you, and then there's I find that what little time I've spent with him, that he's one of those people that is a little more. I don't know. He seems to be a good listener.
Right.
He may not understand, but he listens.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. But there are times that, even up until now in my life with him in particular, if I say something or do something that he doesn't necessarily agree with, he just gets this one particular look on his face, and his lips go in that flat line, and you can tell that he doesn't approve, but he has to accept it because I'm his daughter, and he's not going to disown me.
Right.
So, which I'm very lucky for, because not everyone's that lucky.
Not everybody's that lucky.
No.
I mean, the fact that he won't disown you, that's that's saying something. I think that's a.
And I know he doesn't approve, and I also don't flaunt it or flash it in his face,
Right.
which is probably one of the reasons why I've never actually said, "Hey, guess what?"
Yeah.
Because I don't find it necessary. If it's not an important part of our relationship, it doesn't affect my relationship with him,
Right.
And I don't see the need to really shove it in his face and put something out there that I know he's not going to necessarily agree with. There's no point. There's no point in starting a fight.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
There's no good outcome from it. No reason to.
Yeah.
For me. Should we move to your story? Because yours is a little more convoluted.
It is. Sure. Why not?
When would you say that you first started having inklings that you liked guys?
I am gonna say that I was somewhere between the ages of 3 and 5 when I knew I wasn't like everyone else.
What brought that on?
I remember taking naps, and as a child taking naps, and having fantasies of something going into my ass as a child. Now, I was also diabetic, so I was used to getting shots. And where's the best place to give a shot on a child is in the bum. So I don't know if it was that, but I really remember those vivid fantasies as I'm falling asleep of some sort of anal penetration. And I don't think I was kidnapped by aliens, but I have no proof of that. The truth is out there. Sorry. That was my poor attempt at a X-Files theme. We'll fix that in post.
I was going to say, maybe we need to go back and redo that part.
Yeah, so that's, I think, 3 to 5. That was the age at which I really was like, oh, yes, I feel different. Yeah, I think I remember my first crush, and I should have reviewed the timeline on this to realize when that was. But there was a television show. If you're from the States, you're going to know what this is. But there was a show on Nickelodeon called Clarissa Explains It All. And it was Melissa Joan Hart's first, like, big break role. And she's probably 6 years older than me. And so it was this show, and I remember seeing her and going, oh my God, she's beautiful. Which is funny because it's not really my type now, except for the big eyes and quick to smile kind of thing. But she's blonde. Anyway, nobody's perfect. But then she had this boy that would always crawl in through her window, and I can't remember his name. Starts with a C. Anyway, not important. And I remember as a young child thinking, I wish he would crawl through my window. And so I had this massive crush on both of them at the same time. And I can remember when I had this crush, I didn't see it like you and your girlfriend at school, the female friend at school. I didn't see any problem with it.
Right.
It was that's just how I felt. And admittedly, I don't remember at what point in life that switched and that I started thinking that the liking him was wrong, but liking her was okay. But I feel confident it had something to do with growing up in the South. Just outside external pressures.
Because that's what society tells you it should be.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I never talked to anybody about it. I never told anybody about it. But I knew that I shouldn't tell anybody about it because I didn't want to be ostracized. So, yeah.
Did your parents did you have discussions with them over sexuality at all?
Oh, gosh, no.
Okay.
So I remember, I want to make it very clear. My parents have been amazing and have always been supportive of no matter how foolish of a decision I make or whatnot. It's always been my mistakes to make. But, I remember my dad, at one point I was supposed to be going out with my cousin who is older than I, and her best friend was gay. And I remember we were all going to a movie, and my dad sort of had one of those freak out moments where I wasn't allowed to go out with them because of my cousin's gay friend. He didn't want my cousin's gay friend to be the one that takes me to the bathroom, because I was probably maybe 7 or 8 at the time. And so, my dad had that, which I don't hold it against him.
I think it's a lack of understanding.
It was
it was
that ignorance. Yeah, it was a situation in which he was uncomfortable because he was unfamiliar. He is now a completely different person. But at the time, it really upset him. And he didn't want to be part of that. And so my cousin and my dad got into this huge fight. And I remember sitting on the stairs hearing this. And I think that sort of affected me. I think that's one of those things that was like, that sort of pushed that part of that repression is, about the same time that I was noticing, Clarissa and her beau that climbed in through the window, I hear my dad kind of having a meltdown over me going with a gay male, and how that's not going to happen. That it was just not on the cards. And so they went to the movies, and I stayed home. And memory is a murky pool. So I don't really remember who told me I wasn't allowed to go or why I wasn't allowed to go. Although I know I was there and I heard why. So yeah, that was. I think those are sort of those two like formative things that I really remember before it became something. Which by that time I was in my late teens, early 20s. We do so well at repressing. So yeah, but from that early age, from that 7 to 17 age, very quickly I fell in love with musical theater. I took voice lessons. I sang with a falsetto until I was 16, 17. I was professionally trained to sing as a God, I think I was 16, still singing mezzo soprano without any issues at all. I don't know what it's called. It's falsetto, but anyway, a long time ago. But growing up, I remember doing performing arts for the school. Those things that stick in your brain. I sang favorite things from Sound of Music for a Christmas thing, and I was 16. Of course, did it in the falsetto. Started the song halfway through the first line. Someone, and I still remember his name, unfortunately for him, from the crowd screamed out "fag." Just because I sang and was singing from musical theater and was singing with falsetto. And that was sort of that beginning of those things that triggered for me to give up music. And again, I look back at it now. I look back at it now and I'm like, why did I let this... I mean, the guy's now of no importance at all. Yeah. Why did I let him shape the formative years? But, you can't...
you can't go back and undo
the
it.
history is written in permanent ink.
Yeah.
So there's not much I can do about it now. But I wish I could still go back and talk to 15-year-old Bradford. I joke about that a lot. But yeah, it's rough. But from the musical theater and from the singing, I always knew I didn't fit in, and not from I don't look at it from a negative way, but I think it is a lot different for men and boys than it is for women. Like you and I often talk, sexual fluidity is fine for women. At least it was in our age group, and maybe different now. I'd love to talk to a 14 to 18-year-old now, to see how comfortable they are.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more acceptable for women to be fluid than for men.
Yeah. Especially for people our age group even. Yeah. You go to a swinger club and you see that. And it's sad, but, it is what it is. Wine, top off.
Yeah, Mr. Adams taking a moment to pour some more wine.
I need a drink, folks. Yeah, but, so when I was 11, I built my first computer. Is that right? Yeah, I guess I was. Holy shitballs. Nerd alert.
And what did you do with said computer?
Oh, I looked at porn. By the time I was 11.
Like all good 11-year-olds do.
By the time I was 11 and 1 month, I was downloading porn from the message board. Back then, we didn't have the internet. We had message boards. But, from an early age, watching porn and looking at porn, I remember looking at both the male and the female and going, whoa, this is amazing. And not knowing the experience that a lot of other young men have with porn, for me, I wasn't like trying to put myself in the place of the man and thus, having sex with a woman. I was looking at the whole, not the whole, but the whole, all of it, and thinking, oh, well, this kind of, both sides are amazing. You often say that there's beauty in the female and the male form. And that's what I was seeing. I was seeing this, I was having this lust for both the female and the male. But again, knowing that from growing up, I'm looking at this from 11 to 15, maybe I'm starting my porn career, knowing there was something wrong. And I say wrong, and I guess we probably should go back and re-record a predecessor or an opening for this, saying that these are our experiences and how we felt, not what we think. But it was very. I thought I was wrong. I thought there was something from the core wrong with me, and I remember feeling that way at about 13 or 14. That I'm broken. Yeah, and I think at about 15 was that first time that I really strongly considered suicide, because at that time I thought, oh, this is my only out, and I can remember being diabetic, suicide was easy. All I had to do was inject myself with a little bit of insulin, and it was a relatively easy way to go. And I can remember drawing the insulin up and sitting on the bathtub with a needle full of insulin and just thinking, all I have to do, it's easy. It's 5 seconds and it's gonna be over. And I did that a lot. I think from 15 to probably pushing 20, I probably did that every 6 weeks. And then at the end, I would chicken out because of Catholic upbringing and that fear of the unknown and the beyond. And I would put the insulin back in the bottle and put the bottle back in the fridge. I did that a lot. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're a chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like being a chicken, but I guess in that case, it's...
So then what switched for you and took you from thinking that it was wrong and that your only option was suicide? What then switched and made you, at what point did you start acting on it?
So part of being, and again, this is for me, part of being suicidal was being a chameleon. Mm-hmm. You are constantly miserable or constantly second guessing yourself at least. And you are, I was very good from a very early age at getting people to like me. And so I think that sort of carried on into adulthood. I know what people expect and I know what people want, and I can put on that face and then I can be that person. So I was that person for a very long time. And let's fast forward to the first male experiences I started having while I was a certain person, this chameleon person. On the surface, there was that dark underbelly where I would be on Yahoo Chats, and this is pre-Grindr, pre all these phone apps. The way you met people was through things like Craigslist, and Yahoo groups. So Yahoo had the chat rooms. You could play chess with people, and I'm a big fan of chess. So I would go into the gay chat rooms and I would play chess with some of the men. And so you're playing chess, and in my foolish, and I guess at this point I'd been married for 4 or 5 years. Actually, it's maybe 4 years. I would be in these chat rooms and playing chess with these guys and talking to them, and I don't know. Those were those first interactions, and then it's funny because I always compare it to like CSI, and you always see those things on CSI where they're like, well, the first thing a serial killer does is torment animals, and then once they torment the animals, they move to small children, and then they move to adults, and then they kill and kill and kill. I mean, it was really that growth kind of thing. I started out in chat rooms playing chess. Then I would go to the chat rooms and we would skip the chess and we would just kind of sext back and forth. And then it was, let's trade a few pictures via Yahoo or Hotmail.
I bet that took a while.
Yup. Because you would take a picture. You would take a picture. You would go put it in your computer. You would download it. You would upload it. It was crazy. The amount of effort I would go through. And I was lucky at the time that my wife worked on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. She worked, her days off were Sunday, Monday. And she worked on Saturdays. So that's what I would do on Saturday. All of Saturday from about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., I'd be spent online talking to men. And then at one point, as things always do, escalate, a guy asked me if I wanted to meet face-to-face. And I'd been chatting with him. And it's so funny because I remember it now, and it's just like, it's not a big deal. But at the time, this was one of those things that, we had text, so I texted him the day we had said we were going to meet, and the response I got back was, "Oh, I actually forgot we were going to meet, but yeah, come on over." Mm-hmm. That right there tells you about how good the day was going to go. And I made it over to his house, and it's just funny. He gave me a tour of his house, and of course it ended in the bedroom. And I remember that the bedroom above the headboard, there was probably 14 different crosses, and it was beautiful. I mean, you look at this bed, and above it are all these different crosses. And me growing up Catholic, it's like
that really helps with the Catholic guilt.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, could this have gone any worse?
Yeah,
it's like we're basically having sex on an altar. But, and I remember starting out, I was so nervous. I was literally shaking, not figuratively shaking. I was literally shaking. And he asked me twice, is everything okay? I was like, yes. And of course I didn't come. And of course, I actually faked an orgasm just to calm him down. Because at that time in life, I thought I wanted to be a top. How the days have changed.
The tides have turned.
How the tides have turned. But yeah, so that was my first time with a guy, and it was probably horrific, looking back on it. Yeah, so that was when I escalated. Next question.
Where did you go from there? Did you, because the first time was so terrible, did you then take a break for a while and say maybe this isn't what I want, or did you keep going and just take the bull by the horns with it?
Nope, I took a break. I thought, well, this is wrong. And, those typical things that you think. Oh, well, this is wrong. Of course it's bad. You are a bad person for doing this. That's normal kind of stuff that you think. It's bad because you're bad. And you're bad because you're doing bad things, and et cetera, et cetera. So then I would drive by from work every day a place called the Purple Onion. And the Purple Onion was an adult store that I had been into once just to pick up some wank magazine kind of thing. But they had video booths, and they had 6 video booths in the back. And I think somewhere I still have a coin. I would love to find that coin because I'd probably fucking frame it now. But I went into one of the booths, and of course they have glory holes. And that was the first glory hole experience. So you go into this booth, which honestly, there are porta-johns that are cleaner than this booth. Oh. Yeah, imagine, months of semen that have just sticky. The floors were sticky. There were no stools. You would have to squat or sit on the floor. Ugh. It was horrific.
Yeah.
And I remember going into that room and starting to close the door. I closed the door, and not a few minutes later, somebody knocked on the door, and I was like, I have no idea what this means. So I cracked the door open, and it was this beautiful Adonis of a black man. And he goes, do you want company? And it's so funny because it goes back to those things where you start flying on autopilot, and inside I'm going, no. And how did I respond? Yes, please. And then he came in, and we, it's just like mutual oral, and it was just kind of amazing. And I was horrific because this is, probably the second time I've ever been with a man. But yeah, he was just like, wow, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it is one of those moments that in this nasty, dirty, disgusting place was that moment of, oh, this is there was connection, which there wasn't, but this was my brain, tricking me. But it was amazing. And so then I started going there once every 8 weeks, but it was one of those things that it always happened the same way. I can't tell you, in 8 weeks, I would pull into that parking lot and sit there for 45 minutes trying to build up the courage to go inside. And most of those times I would bail out. And then the whole drive home, I'm thinking, you're such a coward, you have no value. You deserve this. This is what you're building, you're building a house of straw. And you have, again, it was that no value. I was constantly looking at myself. I would look at myself in the mirror and say, you have no value. And at this point in my marriage, I will not and will not say anything bad about my ex-wife, because I think a lot of the problems came from me, and I would project onto her. But I know one of the things she didn't like was kissing, and it's just like, I don't know why, but we didn't kiss anymore, and so I saw that as, again, we didn't kiss because there was a problem with me. And so, yeah,
like we've heard in the previous podcast, you're a very touchy person.
Yeah,
and you
I
need
needed
that
that
to feel valued. Yeah.
So I was consistently feeling less and less valued. And, you know, of course, I wasn't an adult enough to talk to her about it or talk to anyone about it. So I spoke to no one. So, again, back to chameleon, everybody. If you talk to anybody that knew us at the time, we had the perfect marriage. I was the perfect husband. You know, I was the best friend. I was exactly what I was supposed to be because I made damn well sure that that's what I was. I lived my life as a movie, and I made sure that everybody who knew me, you know, I was getting the Academy Award for what I was supposed to be.
So no one knew that you were seeing guys, that you were doing
No.
this on the side? No one?
No. So about this time as well, I met a guy that became my first regular guy, and he lived an hour and 15 minutes away. So she would get up and go to work on Saturdays, and I would get up shortly after she left. She had to be at work at 10. I'd be up at 10, shower, drive down to his place. So I would get to his place around 11:30, spend 4 hours with him, and then come back. And did that probably every weekend for, I don't know, however long we lived in that apartment, so maybe 2 years. And, you know, every weekend it was the exact same thing. Driving down there, I was excited. I can't wait. This is going to be so much fun. And driving back was an hour and 15 minutes of always silence. I never even, you know me in the radio. The radio is always on. But I always drove back in silence, and it was me, again, feeling dirty, hating myself. You know, what you're doing is wrong. You have no value. You're worthless was constantly a word that I would say. Yeah.
So where did it go from there? At what point did this stop, and did you start to accept anything? What happened in between? Was there a lot more, or what was the turning point?
It was a lot of the same of that. So about within the next 3 years, the only thing that really pops up that I really remember was meeting this poor guy. There was a cruisy spot in a park. We moved to a different house. It was so that guy was now 2 hours away, so I didn't see him nearly as often. In fact, very rarely. But we moved to the other side of town, and there was a cruisy park near there. And I remember walking through the park where you would cruise guys, and talking to this guy, and I ended up going down on him in the park, and he was freaking out because of who might catch us, who might see it. I said, well, you can come over to our place, but you know, it's got to be quick. So he followed me back to our place, went in. I mean, it was one of those, I sat him on the couch, I blew him, he came, and he left. And then that was the first time that happened that I was like, this isn't wrong. You know what? This is who I am. It's not wrong. I'm going to go mow the lawn. And so, I know, right? But so I went outside to mow the lawn, and there was a pen that had fallen out of his car. And I picked it up, and the pen was La Petite Academy, which was a nursery school. And I remember standing in the driveway, staring at this school, and all those feelings of worthlessness came back. Because I was like, this guy has a wife, has a kid, or at least one child at this La Petite, whatever. You know, I don't know that for sure.
Right.
You know, that was just some random pen that fell out of his car. But again, for me, that was sort of a sign. You know, like this, and then it all came rushing back. I'm bad. I'm whatever. So then we ended up and moving to the new job out of state, and now I'm traveling all the time. So traveling all the time makes it a lot easier. And at this time, Grindr was invented. Within this time, Grindr was invented. And so that's when it changed for me. That's when suddenly I started, it's like, you know what? If I'm going to hate myself, I might as well enjoy, you know, a few hours a week, you know. And, you know, I think a lot about this still, really. But, you know, when I say I hated myself, I really did hate myself, which is that's a hard thing to come back from. And I still feel that occasionally. It'll come back. There's that swirling pit that's in your chest, and you know what that is. We've had therapy over this. You know, it's just, for those out there, when you have this, always imagine it as a black hole that starts somewhere under my sternum, and it's constantly pulling me in, and it is a violent swirl of little value. But I can remember my ex-wife and I both were on the same iTunes account, of course, because it was cheaper. I would download Grindr, and I would wait to download things like this until she was in the shower, because then I could go get her phone and delete it from her phone so that she didn't see it pop up on her phone. I often wonder if she ever went through like, oh, I thought I bought this app, and then goes through the apps and sees, and then along the list she's like, well, I don't remember buying at the same time Grindr, Scruff, Boy Ahoy. I still wonder that. I'd love to be able to ask her, but I don't think that'll ever happen. But I was traveling all the time, and hotels and hotel bars are a great place to meet people. And in 4 years of doing that, 6 years of doing that, I guess, the number of times I was either picked up or picked someone up from a bar, or the number of times you would go to your room and you'd get dressed down and get in bed and open Grindr and see that somebody was either the floor above you or 2 floors below you, or at one point the dude was literally across the hall. And you would that was it, the quick hookups.
Can't get any easier than that.
No, you really can't.
Yeah.
And so, I remember I had great experiences. I remember being in Miami, Florida. I'm not Miami, Tampa, Florida. I was in Tampa, and I went to their red light district, basically, to find a place with booths with glory holes, and hooked up with this guy in there. And then afterwards he was like, hey, do you want a tour of around the area? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I hopped in his car and we drove around. He's like, this is where you get the prostitutes, and this is where the men are. And he was bisexual, and he was showing me all the areas. I was like, oh, this is great. And he was such a wonderful guy. And then he dropped me off in my car, and he's like, well, it was a lot of fun, and that's when it started becoming normal. I was meeting people that didn't hide it. They were proud of who they were, and that's
nice people,
good people.
Yeah.
They just happen to like to hook up in bathrooms or video booths, or meet you on Grindr. And the vast majority of us were married, and
just your normal everyday people.
Yeah, they really were.
Yeah.
They were definitely normal everyday people. So that leads us to Toronto.
Yes.
Which I know you know all of this. I think our listeners know some of this, but I met this guy, who I remember going to the bar, and I was by myself, and he came down with a large group of workmates, and they all had drinks, and this was a time where I was spending months. I think I spent 4 months in Toronto. And the next couple of nights they came down, it was a smaller group. And the next couple of nights it came down as a smaller group, and I think at one point there was maybe 4 of them, and somebody said a joke, I laughed, and then they noticed I laughed, and they were like, oh my gosh, you're here every night, come over and sit with us. So I came over and sat with them, and then the next night it was just him and I sat at the bar, and we just sat at the bar and talked, and it was one of those wonderful things. And I really, really liked him, and I was holding it in. So of course, I didn't want him to know that I thought he was amazing. And I think it was the next night he was like, what's your room look like or something? I don't remember. It was something cheesy. Anyway, we went up to the room, and it was just a little mutual oral, and it was great. And we set a date to have dinner the next night. And I liked him enough that I was like, I want to be honest with this guy. And that was the first time I ever wanted to be honest with somebody. And we had dinner, and I said, look, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I'm married. And he said, that's okay, I have a girlfriend. And we both kind of laughed, and then was like, all right, cool. And so I think that was the time we started dating. And, there was those odd times he would spend the night with me, and but yeah, that was he was sort of that beginning of the end. He was that catalyst that I needed, because it was the first time I'd ever truly understood what chemistry was. I think, you see chemistry in the movies, and for the longest time I thought that only happened in movies. Like, what you and I have. I didn't think that was really what people actually experienced. So I remember at one point, after he and I had been seeing each other for a long time, and I would go home and see my wife, and she and I had a very wonderful, cordial relationship, but that was basically it. I remember being in Toronto and in the hotel, and somewhere around 10 o'clock at night, and he had to cancel on me for some reason, and he had to cancel on me for some reasons before, multiple times. And I was starting to feel that very typical alone, trapped kind of feeling. And I remember sitting out on the balcony, and I think I was on the third floor, fifth floor. I'm pretty sure it was the fifth floor. And I remember and for me, I'm terrified of heights. But I remember climbing up and sitting on the banister for the balcony. And I had I was sitting with my back to the open space, and I had my foot kind of caught in the railing. And I just kept telling myself, it's going to be quick. How long, then I was thinking, how long does it take to fall from the fifth floor to the ground? And I was going through the math of terminal velocity, blah, blah, blah. I was fucking nerding out, thinking about just all I have to do is lean backwards. And I would lean backwards a little, and then it was all you have to do is let your foot out. That's all it's going to take. And I sat like that from probably somewhere near 10 to somewhere near 11. And at some point, At some point, a friend called me, and he called me, and it was much later than he normally would ever call, and he asked me. He said, I answered the phone. I got off the balcony. I answered the phone, and he instantly went, "What's wrong?" And so I just came out and told him everything. And man, he instantly, he said, "Dude, fuck, I don't care. That's not important. Why does that matter?" And I remember sitting there going, it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. And that was exactly what I needed to hear at the time. He listens to the podcast, so it's the only thing I could ever say to him is thank you. Just bring me tissues. Thank you, dear. But yeah, the thirsty turtle out there, and if it wasn't for him, I would not be here. Because I had made that decision. This is what I'm going to do, and so yeah, I told him, and he was like, "Dude, I don't fucking care." And I remember him saying, "Are you attracted to me?" And I went, "No." He goes, "Dude, why not?" And I went, "You're not my type." And he goes, What do you mean I'm not your type? Am I not good enough for you?" But yeah, so he was the first person I told. And so, yeah, after that, I think the next person I told was my mom, who had spent some time with my ex-wife and I called her. I was in Dulles Airport, flying back from Toronto, and I just basically said, "Mom, I'm unhappy." And she goes, "I know." I said, well, okay. She goes, what's wrong? And I told her that I've been cheating on my wife. And she goes, okay. And I said, it's bad. She goes, all right, how bad is it? I said, it's with a guy. And she goes, okay. Did he give you something? I sat there for a minute and I was like, oh my God, she means an STD. No, he didn't give me something. She goes, oh, okay. Did you give him something? Like, Mom! Like, no, I didn't. And she goes, well, then there's nothing wrong. And I remember thinking, what? There's nothing wrong? I'm having a minor breakdown in fucking Dulles Airport, of all places, and there's nothing wrong. And she was, again, I gotta give my mom mad props. She's, at the moment, that was exactly what I needed. And then not a couple weeks later, I was with another colleague, and I told him, and he looked at me and he was like, some of my best friends are gay. I went, dude, I'm not gay, I'm bisexual. He goes, nobody's perfect. It was those responses. It's those three people who I came out to in the very beginning are, the best friend colleague, the parent, and the other colleague. I could not have painted a better. I'm so lucky to have those people that I chose to first come out to. And, really, the vast majority of the people that I came out to basically looked at me and was like, fuck, I don't care. And I think that's the thing. With most of us, if it doesn't affect us directly, we don't fucking care about it. No. And so I think that was exactly what I needed. I've been rambling on for like 20 minutes. I apologize.
You have a lot to say.
Yeah, but how much of it is important? So yeah, those were those. That was that. That was coming out, and from that point, I think that was that. After that, I started talking to my ex-wife, and we had other problems. It wasn't just this. It wasn't just me being bisexual. It wasn't me cheating. It wasn't all of that, it wasn't just all of that. No. We had other problems, and ultimately we couldn't work through them. Mm-hmm. And then it started becoming sort of a game for me of coming out to people. And I remember coming out to you for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so the short version of this, I don't know, should we save this for an origin story? Because I feel like we need an origin story, much like an X-Man or... Yeah. Let's do that. Okay. You'll have to wait for this till later. When I came out to Mrs. Atom. Yeah, I actually had that in my notes. So
we'll have an origin story where Mr. and Mrs. Atom meet in Clyde.
Yeah. Atom in the Hadron in Switzerland, or CERN. We did that in CERN.
Yeah.
I still to this day, it is a constant struggle to accept myself, to look at myself and see value, to be confident and comfortable and happy in my own skin. That was part of the reason I got the tattoo, on my chest was, this is something I want to look at. And I think happiness, I've got serotonin tattooed on my arm. Again, it's that I need that physical, mental reminder of, I have value. What I have, not of like what I have around me, like the people. I know the people I have are valuable, mm-hmm. but to see that value within myself is still so extremely difficult. And I think it is, a lot of it for me is sexuality. Mm-hmm. I see myself and I'm like, why can't you just settle on one thing? Or why can't you not like boys? Or why can't you not like girls? Why can't you just be, normal?
But it's hard to undo 30 years of
Absolutely.
Training one way and hating yourself and being told that, this is what you're supposed to be. It's hard to overcome that. That's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and I know you're right, but it's interesting because I find myself doing, I get those dark thoughts and it's impossible. It's that vicious spiral. You start spiraling down. You're like, oh, I don't want to think this way, and I know right now, like I don't think this way, but you can't not think. It's like when I tell you don't think about a pink elephant. What do you think about?
A purple polka dotted elephant.
Of course you do.
So when you start
One
down,
in every room.
So when you start down that spiral now, do you recognize that you're going into that spiral?
Yes, absolutely. I see it, and I'm like, I know what this is. This is a bad place, and you mentally tell yourself this is a bad place, and I'd be 100% honest. It's like standing on a corner waiting for the light to change, and you see that bus coming, and I feel like it's gravity pulling me. Mm-hmm. And there's been times where
That's why I keep you on the leash.
I know, right? But there's times where I'll put my hand on the stoplight or the street sign pole, and I'll just close my eyes, and you just sort of close your eyes and you try to find your center and you try to find your balance, and I still feel that it's like a pull from my chest. It's pulling me there. That's where it's going, and I don't. Now I don't want it. I think that I know that's not the solution. I know that's not the right idea. I know that I am happy now, but I still feel that pull, and that's what really frightens me. But I think it's a good scared. It's a good kind of afraid. But I think once you feel that, once you have that, it's hard to get it away. It's hard to get away from it.
But the fact that you recognize it then means you can do something about it. At least you know how to handle it when it does happen.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget the first time I went to a therapist. It was great. Say with great sarcasm. And we sit down, and she goes, okay, what do you want to tell me? And I'm like, and there's supposed to be like some flirting first or something. You're supposed to say hi. Where are your credentials? And I said, okay, I'm afraid that if I tell you something, you're going to say something that makes me not able to do my job. And if I can't do my job, I'll lose my job. And she looks at me and she goes, have you thought about or attempted suicide? And I said, define attempted. And she kind of laughed. She goes, that response right there tells me I'm not going to have you put away. And then I went, okay. And then I told her the whole thing. And she's like, yeah, you're okay. She's like, just keep a leash on it. Mm-hmm. Don't be stupid. Is what she did. I had a therapist tell me not to be stupid, which
that's awesome.
I know, right? That's what I needed. That's exactly what I needed. So yeah, that's my origin story, I suppose. I feel like it's still going on. We often talk about, bisexual and bi-erasure and stuff like that. And, I'm extremely passionate about it because of how, I know how difficult it is. I know how difficult it can be. There's a lot of people out there who wake up in the morning, they look at themselves and they see there is something flawed with me. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what you are. You can be straight, gay, lesbian, transgendered. You can be a human with a monkey on your head. There's nothing wrong with you. You have value. You're important. There are people out there, whether you don't see it or not, who love you, who value you, who need you, who think that, even if it's someone you don't even know, the person that you get your coffee from, you're important.
And you'd be amazed at how many people you impact that you may not even realize. Like you said, the person you get your coffee from. And there's often those people that are on the sidelines in your life that you don't even, maybe not even notice, but they notice you. Yeah. And it makes a difference. It can make a difference to them. And you may not see it. Hopefully at some point, that person would say something to you, but you're not always aware of everything that's going on with everyone around you. But I do believe that we all make an impact on someone somewhere.
Yeah, I agree completely. So, keep your eyes open and, smile to people, be nice to one another, and say thank you and hello. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to be kind. Yeah. Should we wrap it up?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to forego a question tonight. I'm kind of too stressed to listen to a question anyway. As always, we greatly appreciate our listeners. We greatly appreciate feedback. We'd love to hear your stories. I feel like we tell our stories all the time.
Yeah.
And we get a few stories from y'all, and we really, really do appreciate it. But email your stories, comments, questions, rude remarks to theatomsoflove@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @ByTheBy or find us on our website at www.bytheby.com.au, bythebi.com.au. And so I guess for tonight, I'm Bradford.
And I'm Angela.
And thank you all for listening.
Yes, thank you.